going on, guys? Welcome to the Deadbeat Devs first ever computer build guide. As you can see, we got all our parts right here. We put together a very nice $900 gaming PC. It's really awesome. We got the latest GeForce GTX 970, so we're going to be putting that in. Maybe even doing some benchmarks at the end. As for the rest of the parts list will be here. Pause the video, take a look at that. I don't think there's anything much else to be said. All you'll really need to build it is some screwdrivers. You probably only need one or two of these, probably really just a Phillips head. We have some microfiber cloths because we're going to be replacing the CPU thermal paste, which you can also do with coffee filters. And we have here an anti-static mat, which you're going to want to take the clip and put it on your clothing. You can also put it on your ankle or something if you want it out of the way, on your wrist, wherever you want. It's just going to ground you so you don't have electrostatic discharge ruining your parts.
And also, this video is going to be taken very slow. We're not going to assume anything. We're going to explain everything very thoroughly detailed and with great detail. Just for any of you that are looking to build a PC, but maybe you just don't know what you're doing, or you're just nervous about it. And if you know what we're talking about, you can just skip over to the next bit.
Yeah. And just as a clarification, again, for someone who's maybe never built a PC before, this is just one instance of a PC build, but pretty much this can be these techniques and everything can be applied to any PC build. All the parts are going to be the same. It's just going to be slight variations on those parts. Yeah, different models. But yeah, anything we do here, unless we say otherwise, it can pretty much be applied to any other computer build. So
without further ado, let's get started.
All right, so we start off first with our motherboard. Right here we have the Gigabyte 78LMT Micro ATX motherboard. Real quick, for those of you who don't know, a motherboard is simply just the PCB on which every other thing is mounted. It's your CPU and all the coolers for that, your memory, your graphics card, and any other peripherals you plug into the PCI Express slots. Let's take it out.
Yeah, this part we'll do right now. We'll speed it up. Yeah, we'll talk about some of these. Yeah, no, this is Keep the box and work on top of it. Want to work on top of it? Yeah. I think it was breakfast, then maybe that's what the easy. Oops. No, this was plugged into.
Okay, so what we've done, we've taken the motherboard out of the box and out of the anti-static bag that it came in. We put it on top of the box since this is a good anti-static environment for you to work on your motherboard. Real quickly, just some of the things that came with the motherboard. First of all, we have this piece. It is an I/O shield. This is going to go on the back of your computer, and it's what all of the ports on the back of the motherboard, which you can see here, are going to stick out through, and you can plug them into. So that's like a USB, your HDMI, whatever happens to be on your motherboard. Also, you'll notice these cables are blue. They are SATA cables. These are simply to transfer data to your motherboard from your hard drives. And lastly, we have a user manual. I just note this because there's a CD inside of here, and also have your drivers. You may need this after you install your OS. Alright, so now that we've got the motherboard out of the case, I'm just going to do a real quick breakdown of every little thing on this motherboard before we start actually building on it. I guess let's just get right to it. First of all, this big imposing square right here, that's the CPU socket. In this case, it is for an AMD chip, an AM3 Plus socket. Right here we have 4 DIMM slots for your memory. We will only be running one stick, but definitely recommend one of the enhancements you can do on this build is run it to 2 sticks, so you'll be running dual channel. You'll be getting a lot more throughput on your memory. This port right here, we're going to be coming back to this. This is your 24-pin power. That's going to power pretty much everything on the motherboard that doesn't have its own external power. Here, and these 4 ports over here, these are your SATA connectors. That's what's going to transmit data from your hard drive to your motherboard. All of these right here, which we'll be using, are front panel headers. These are for your audio and USB ports on the front. And these slots right here, this one in particular is your PCI Express 2.0 slot, which is what we're going to, in this build, plug our graphics card into. You also have 2 other slots. This is just a PCI Express. It's an expansion slot for smaller expansion cards like networking and some audio cards. And this one is actually a legacy slot. It'll support older expansion cards and the like. Last thing I want to mention, this chip right here on the back, this is your audio chip. It's you'll notice it's kind of separated from the rest of the board. That's just to reduce interference on your audio. And very last thing, it's kind of hard to see. I'll turn the board. You have another 8-pin power connector right here. That's going to be power for your CPU.
Okay, first thing we're going to install from motherboard is the processor. This is an AMD FX-6300 6-core processor, Black Edition. The first thing I want to stress before I do anything is make sure that you're in a static-free environment, or if, a way to discharge any static you might have is touch a piece of unpainted metal, in this case, screwdriver. So, just take this out.
Make sure you're connected to your anti-static mat. Steve is clipped in right now.
Got our user's manual.
Very important.
Advanced micro devices. Alright, we're going to be using the stock cooler, just because we don't have anything else.
Don't put it down.
Alright.
Important learning lesson. Stock coolers, they come with thermal paste, which helps to efficiently transfer heat from the processor to the heatsink pre-installed. We're going to be wiping this off. We have a microfiber cloth, and you're going to be replacing it with our own thermal paste. Definitely recommend you pick up your own thermal paste. This is Arctic Silver 5, costs about $5. Just pick it up. You'll get much more efficient heat transfer with this, but we'll do that in just a second.
Alright, before we put this in, let's just lift up this.
The installation process is going to be slightly different depending on your processor and socket type, but in the case of an AM3 socket type, you just lift up the retention arm. Steve's going to put the processor in with the gold triangle on the processor aligning with the triangle on the socket. And once it's in securely, just give it a wiggle, make sure it's in there. And then you just simply lower the retention arm back down and clip it in. And your processor is now installed. So before we go ahead and install our heatsink, like I said before, it does come pre-installed with thermal paste on it. And we want to take this off because we have our own aftermarket thermal paste. If you didn't buy thermal paste of your own, it's fine. You can use it. You can just skip this step and just use what's on there. It'll work totally fine. Ours probably just work a little bit better. We'll be running a few degrees cooler. Anyway, but the process to remove it, just get a microfiber cloth or a coffee filter or any kind of cloth that won't leave lint, and simply just wipe it off.
Just get the big chunks first. Let me speed this up. Yeah, I don't think I'm just going to fast forward this. Yeah.
Alright, that's about as clean. Yeah, maybe a little bit there. There we go. That's about as clean as I can get this thing. I've gotten just about every bit of thermal paste off of there. So now we're going to put this aside for now while we apply the thermal paste to our CPU.
So here we have our thermal paste. This nice little syringe. So how do I apply it?
Yep, so there are a bunch of techniques. Everyone has a different school of thought. There's like an X pattern. There's kind of put the whole thing on and spread it out. The one I find works best is just the rice method. Now, pretty much what that is, you're just gonna put just a little bit of it in the center of the CPU, about the size of a grain of rice. And you may think this won't cover the whole CPU. A little bit more than that.
A little more?
It's about an uncooked grain of rice. What it's going to do is when you put the CPU cooler down onto there, it's going to spread out the thermal paste just enough to cover all the cores of the CPU efficiently, and you get really good heat transfer that way.
So that's a good size?
Yeah, that should be good.
All right, then.
Right about right.
Let's cap this.
And
put our
so,
heatsink down.
Again, this heatsink installation will vary a little bit different. Will be a little bit different for each socket type. For the AM3 Plus, you just pop it down, and there'll be a clip on either side that'll hook onto a little tab on a little plastic side on either side of the socket. So, he puts it down there.
Yep.
He applies pressure so the thermal paste spreads out.
Yep, that should be good.
And once both clips are on, he just pulls the retention arm. And you'll hear a little snap, and just like that, the CPU cooler is installed.
There you go.
So, last step to finish the installation of your CPU cooler, you're going to take the power plug for the fan and plug it into the CPU fan header.
Right here.
Yeah, it's right there.
Tiny little socket.
You'll notice there's a little guide on one side of the plug, so it'll only go in one way. So don't give it too much pressure. It should slide in pretty easily. And there you go.
All right, the next thing we're going to install, this will only take like 2 seconds, is the memory. or the RAM, I should say.
So we have right here just one stick of Fury HyperX memory with a nice blue heatsink. It's a 8 gig stick. One of the upgrades you can definitely do to this computer, like I said earlier, is get another 8 gig stick of the same memory and run it in dual channel. This will really help to increase your memory throughputs. You can run quad channel as well. We do have 4 DIMM slots. I don't usually, when I'm using my computer, I don't see too much of a difference between quad and dual channel. Anyways, so pretty much to install the RAM, you'll notice a little notch on the bottom of the RAM to make sure that lines up with the actual DIMM slots. Pop open the tabs on either side. If you're just using one stick, make sure you use the first memory channel.
Does that really matter?
Yes, it does.
Why?
Don't worry about it.
Because OCD, that's why.
Because OCD, that's why.
Yeah. Anyway, so make sure you just push it in, give it a firm push, and the clips that you pushed out should pop back in, and that's how you know the memory is installed correctly.
And they did.
Alright, so actually everything we need to do on the motherboard for now anyways is all set. So we're going to put this aside in a safe place, and we're going to move on to next, the case preparation. Alright, so we've got the case over here. All we did was take off the top and left side panel. What we're going to do right now first is just the power supply installation. So Steve's got the power supply right here.
A nice 500 watt EVGA power supply.
Yep, and by the way, even though this is a smaller micro ATX case, it does support full-sized ATX power supplies.
Alright, so that just fits in very nicely.
Installation's very easy so far. You just kind of slide it in. So next step, we have these screws right here that came with the case. They're just the 4 screws for mounting the power supply. We're going to take them out. And I'll turn this way so you get a better shot. We're going to find the 4 holes that for the back of the power supply to screw these in. And just screw them in with a Phillips. Okay, so we've now flipped the case over and removed the side panel with the acrylic window, and we're going to just install the motherboard. First step though, we have to take this I/O shield that came with the motherboard, that'll have cutouts for all the ports on the motherboard, and stick it into the case. So it's really simple, just make sure it's aligned the right way, just make sure the letters, they'll be readable from the outside, and you just stick it in there.
And it's a little finicky sometimes, take some pressure, don't be afraid to push it. But it should just snap into place. Oh. I hate these things. Side note.
There we go. Boom. Oh, wait. There we go, for real. Yeah.
Now, boom.
I put in an I/O shield.
Congratulations.
Alright, so now to install the actual motherboard. It's still over here where I put it in a safe place. Make sure you pick it up. The best part that you can pick it up and not have static electricity issues is by the heatsink. So just take it and kind of go in at an angle. Quick note. In other motherboards, you might have to install standoffs for the motherboard to stand on, and then you would then screw the motherboard into that. In this case, they're pre-installed, so we don't have to worry about that. But just a note if you have a different case.
Alright, so now we flip the case back around and we're going to start installing the motherboard. We still have it over on the side where we kept it. When you pick it up, you should pick it up from the heatsink. And so one thing to note when you put it in, try not to scrape it across the bottom here. It'll screw it up. Alright, so let's just...
You're going to want to kind of put it in an angle and make sure that the ports go through the I/O shield that you had just installed. Oh, wait, one second.
Okay.
Yeah, so you shouldn't have to put too much pressure on it, and the holes, which I'm pointing out in this motherboard, should line up to the standoffs, which it looks like they're doing right now.
Are they supposed to push right through, or
Yes.
is that fine the way they are?
Yeah, the ports on the back should push through a little bit, especially the DVI and the VGA, because they have to have screws that hold on to them. But yeah, right now we have this installed properly. Next part is to just actually screw it in, make sure it doesn't go anywhere. So you'll notice the holes. I'll point them out here, here, and just kind of all around the board. There are 8 in total, and they go into the pre-installed motherboard standoff. So we're going to be using these screws right here. Hopefully that kind of gives you an indication as to what they are. And just screw them in.
Speed this up. Curiosity sucks.
And boom, it's in.
So now we're going to be installing our hard drive on this little back panel right here. We got a WD blue 1 terabyte hard drive. Just going to put it in the third slot right here. Alright, so we just installed it into the slot for it, and it's actually completely toolless. It did have 4 holes for screws on either side, but these slots just clip right into it. All you have to do is just bend it a little. And let's just put that back in. Right. And there we go. One of possibly 3 hard drives installed. And now for the pièce de résistance of this entire build.
This is the hot girl that all the other dudes stare at.
Along with her ugly friends.
Yeah. So
GTX 970.
pretty beautiful.
Oh, it's nice.
So the installation of this is pretty easy. We'll get a shot of that. But first, just to note, it is a dual slot card, and we had to take out 2 of the expansion slots on the back of this. To do that, you simply take this little piece right here. It lifts up, and these you are just able to, after a little bit of wiggling, they slide straight up and out. All right.
We're going to leave those.
Yeah, but this one we're leaving in. It's just the 2 middle ones for the PCI Express slot on this particular motherboard.
Okay, we're going to be installing the graphics card in this PCI Express slot 2.0. And here we go. It's just... There we go.
So getting the card in, you should hear a little bit of a clip. The clip on the back of the PCI Express slot should go back in, and it should be nice and snug. If you do, quick note, for this part right here, if you do not have a toolless case, you'll have to, oftentimes there are screws that you have to put in. In this case, it's totally toolless. So
this just flips up and holds it in place.
Yep, and that is totally installed right now. So this build essentially right now is completely done except for one crucial bit, the power. Okay, so it is now time to run power to all of the components. I'm just gonna, with this power supply, go through the connectors we're gonna need to actually get this all up and running. The first one, this is your SATA power. It comes daisy chained like this, so you can power a few devices off of it. We're only gonna need one because we only have one hard drive, and that's where this goes. Next, we have these PCIe 8-pin connectors. You'll notice they're also daisy chained. We're gonna use one of these to power the graphics card, which takes 2 6-pin connectors. So because it only takes a 6-pin, just take this 2-pin and kind of put it off to the side, and you'll plug that in. Next, we have this, it's a 20 plus 4-pin connector. So you just route those together. Your motherboard, most motherboards actually nowadays are just going to use 24-pin power. So we'll just route this through, and we'll show you exactly where to put it, but it just goes in your motherboard. And lastly, we have another 8-pin power connector, and this is for your CPU power. Some Intel processors only use a 4-pin. In this case, we're using AMD, and it uses 8 pins for power. So we're going to route that through and show you where to put this as well. Okay, so first we're running the SATA power, this long daisy-chained one, to our hard drives. If you have 3, you have 3 plugs right here, you can power them all with this. I'm just going to take one, and I'm going to find the power plug on my hard drive. You'll see there are a few plugs. One, the longer one on the right side of the hard drive, if you're looking at it from the top, is going to be the SATA power. You're going to take this, find which way to orientate it, and simply plug it in. You won't get a click or anything, but you won't be able to shove it in anymore. Alright, so what I've done, I've flipped it over and I've routed the 3 different cables we're going to need on this side. That is the 20 plus 4-pin connector right here. We've got the PCIe power right here, which is going to be for our graphics card. And over here, I've got the 8-pin CPU power. You'll notice I've kind of run them through according to where the plugs they're associated with go. So our cable management is a little bit neater. So to begin, to power your motherboard, which get the PCIe connector out of the way, to power your motherboard, take the 20 plus 4-pin connector if you have a 24-pin power, and you're going to find that on your motherboard typically around here. And it's going to vary slightly, but you simply take it, make sure the 4-pin power connector is lined up, and plug it in. Whoops. Make sure you have it the right way. Yep. And shove the cables back down.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yep. Next, I'm just going to plug in the graphics card. And like I said, this one has two 6-pin power connectors, but these are 8 pins plus 2, or 6 pins plus 2, really. So you can just put the plus 2 to the side because we won't need them, just the two 6 pins. So if you just go over to the graphics card, we take one, plug it in, again the right way, take the other, same thing, boom. That looks a little bit ugly. I'm probably gonna get to that in cable management, but hey, it's powered. And lastly, it's a little bit wonky with this case, but we do have to power the CPU. We have this 8-pin or 4+4 pin for the CPU power. There wasn't any other grommet to route the cables through, except for up here, and the CPU power is all the way over here. So it might get a little bit messy. I think in cable management, I'm going to run this cable under this fan, so it's kind of out of the way, not running over the motherboard. But you can do that after. Just to show you, you basically just go over, same as the others, plug it in. One little bit, pretty important bit I actually forgot, is we have to plug in the SATA cable. Now SATA is, it's into the hard drive. It's not power, it's just data. It's going to transmit data from your hard drive to your motherboard. So just to do that, you should have gotten a few with your motherboard. Ours are a nice blue color. I just take it and plug it. It goes right next to the SATA power, and it should clip in for you. And once you have it secure, you're gonna route it through the motherboard. Join me. Join me on the other side. Yeah. Once you have it run through, you're going to find those SATA ports that I pointed out earlier, and go ahead and plug it in, and just kind of tuck the cable away as much as you can. But yeah, now your hard drives can transfer power to your motherboard. Transfer data. They transfer data now.
Data is power.
That's what SATA cables do. Yeah, knowledge is power, so really it's the exact same thing. Alright, so at this point in the build, there are only a few things left to do. First of all, you're going to want to plug in all of your fans. So you'll just take the 3-pin power connector for the fan, find the appropriate spot on the motherboard, and for instance this one says this is a system fan, and you just plug them in. It is the connectors are going to be 4 pins, but they'll, again, like everything else so far we plugged in, it'll support 3 pins. The only other thing we have to do is take the front panel connectors, that's going to be your USB ports, your audio ports, and plug them in down here. Alright, so we're almost done with the build. Just a few things left to do. First of all, we've got to take the fan connectors for all of our fans installed in the system. These are a 3-pin, and you'll notice the plugs labeled fan or 4-pin. It's fine, they fit, and they'll work just fine. You can only put them in one way. Just slide them on, like the same thing we did the CPU fan. And the other thing we have to do is take the front panel connectors. That includes your USB, your headphone and audio jack, and also the LEDs for those, and plug them in down here. So this big one is your USB. It'll plug into the appropriate one. They're all labeled. Your audio connector is actually over here, and there are a bunch of small ones that correspond to the power switch, the reset switch, and the LEDs that are associated with those. And actually right now everything on this computer is done. We're gonna power it on and see how it works. Alright, and one last thing to mention, a major consideration which we're kind of skipping over just because of our case is cable management. You notice this is kind of a mess. In most cases that are flat, you have maybe about 1/4 to 1/2 inch in bigger cases to manage your cables. So you're going to want to lay them flat, use zip ties, use twist ties, and get them all looking flush. Frankly, we don't really need to do that. We have all this area down here that nothing else is going into. So for this build, we're just going to take all these, kind of bundle them up, and put them right here. We'll probably put a zip tie around them just so they stay there, but yeah, that's cable management for this case. And after all that, the build is done. It was a long road, but glad we got here.
Ah, but wait, you're forgetting one very important detail.
What did I forget?
Now it's done.
Oh, that sound. Yep, and if, just to prove it works, Steve, you want to do the honors?
Turn it on. Let's actually plug the power cord in.
Yeah, very important when if you plug it on, plug it in, basic troubleshooting, switch the power supply on, make sure all your power connectors are done.
Let's make sure everyone can see that LED. There we go.
Yeah, you might receive certain beep codes if your motherboard has a speaker built in, or flash codes. These are error codes. I just look them up, and that'll help you troubleshoot any issues you have if you did a build similar to this.
And look at that. You can barely even hear it. It's very nice.
That
Very
is
nice and
whisper quiet. That's yeah, we
like my laptop is louder than this.
yeah, we're gonna go install the OS, and we're gonna get to gaming. And we might do a video on that. We'll see.
Oh, we're definitely doing videos on that.
Yeah, there'll be plenty of gaming videos coming out.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think that's it. Deadbeat Devs.